Well, hello, all my BC WrestlePod nerds out there, and welcome to a special edition of WrestleWatch, your WWE PLE review show here at BC WrestlePod. You might be wondering to yourself, why is it different? Well, the reason is that to be fully transparent, this is a pre-recorded review of WWE's Crown Jewel Perth, and the reason why it's pre recorded is I had a last minute emergency that needed to be taken care of. And so I recorded this in advance in order to be able to deal with what is currently going on. Do not fret, everything is good. And we will be back to our regular scheduled programming tomorrow, starting with our AEW review. But for today, we are doing a pre record for Crown Jewel Perth. So before I get into everything, of course, as the announcements go, follow us on YouTube and subscribe. Follow us on Twitch or Kick. Follow us on the social medias at BC WrestlePod, and go check out our merch at bcwrestlepodshop.fourthwall.com. So that is where everything is. So with all that out of the way, let's just get straight into it. I'm going to be doing a deep dive into Crown Jewel Perth. I've got match by match analysis, telling you where the show worked for me, where it didn't, and why I landed on the final grade of B for the report card that I gave earlier out in the weekend. So if you got your own scores, drop them in the comments and let's debate. So let's go and just get straight into it. So before we hit the matches, Crown Jewel came to Perth, Australia, marking the first time this PLE has been held outside of Saudi Arabia. This card had 5 key bouts, which included an Australian street fight, Big Bronson Reed versus Roman Reigns, the Women's Crown Jewel Championship, Stephanie Vaquette versus Tiffany Stratton. We had John Cena versus AJ Styles as part of John Cena's retirement tour. We had a women's tag team match of Io Sky and Rhea Ripley taking on the Kabuki Warriors. And then main eventing the show was the Men's Crown Jewel Championship match between Seth Rollins and Cody Rhodes. I rated these matches in order from beginning to end as a 3.3, a 3.9, a 4.5, a 3.8, and a 4.5, culminating in a B. So let me walk you through why I gave each match the grade that I did, and let's get into our analysis. So again, match 1 was our Australian street fight, which I dubbed a 3.3 out of 5. Big Bronson Reed defeated Roman Reigns here. This opening match was built for the local heat, and when I say local heat, it was built because Bronson Reed is in his home country, and he is taking on the juggernaut Roman Reigns. Simply put, this match was made and put here, and the reason why that this exists is because the payoff was needed and was there. Reed won a rare singles pin over Roman Reigns, but as far as a street fight goes, it felt underwhelming in escalation. Again, the spots were fine. The interference happened with the Usos coming in and everything, and, Braun Breaker being about here. Tables and weapons were present, but the match itself never grew into something dramatic enough to match the stipulation. And this is my issue with street fights and no DQ matches, and not just in WWE, but in other major promotions as well. If you're going to have a street fight, no DQ, no holds bar, last person standing, the match as it goes along, to me, has to grow in escalation, and it has to start out picking up to where things get crazier. And to me, this match, again, it's WWE, so they don't go hardcore. They don't go nuts when it comes to these street fights. Nobody's going to be bleeding all over the place, at least not on purpose. However, if you're going to have something of this caliber, like a Australian street fight, you need to make sure that each spot, each place in the match escalates into something more dramatic. And unfortunately, it was because of the mismatch between the concept of a street fight versus the execution of the street fight that we got here is why I capped it at a 3.3 out of 5. It was still a solid match, But again, street fights in WWE don't necessarily escalate anymore like they used to. But that's okay. We're in a new era and I'm fine with it. Ultimately, this was to get Bronson Reed the win. And, spoiler alert, because I also caught Raw and got the report card ready for that the Vision turned on Seth. So going to be interesting to see what happens with all of this down the line. Now we get into our second match, which was the Women's Crown Jewel Championship match. I gave it a 3.9 out of 5. Stephanie Vaquer defeating Tiffany Stratton. Vaquer versus Stratton. This was short, but technically solid. And I think that has been the biggest talking point for a lot of my podcast hosts who cover WWE with me, some other podcasting friends of ours, as well as some other news outlets and wrestling outlets as well. Many podcasters, reviewers, and even ESPN pointed out that the match's brevity was kind of the big downer of this whole entire match. Which, because of this brevity, we never really got the full build or an extended back and forth that you'd hope for in a champion versus champion type of match. Still, I think Tiffany and Stephanie did really awesome in this match. They did really good. The moves landed. There were near wins teased. The finish had decent impact. And for me, this match was ultimately a middle ground. It was solid, but not necessarily great, and that is where the 3.9 out of 5 lives for me. I do want to say it is really fun, and as a Latino and somebody who has been following Stephanie Vaquer's career for as long as I've been a wrestling fan prior to coming to WWE, and now that she's in WWE, it is really beautiful to see Stephanie in less than a year get 4 different types of championships reigns. She was NXT Women's North American Champion and NXT Women's Champion at the same time. So she was double champ when she was in NXT. She is currently the Women's World Championship after defeating Io Sky for the vacant title at WrestlePalooza last month. And now she is the 2025 Women's Crown Jewel Champion. So I love that for her. And you know what? Tiffy time is always going to still be amazing. What I'm hoping to see is that this is where Tiffany can go off of television for a little bit and recuperate. I think before that, though, Tiffany should lose her championship, and I think she should lose it to Julia, in my opinion. Have her go off television and have her come back as a heel where nobody was there to help her. So she's going to revert back to her old heel NXT ways of, Tiffany Stratton. So I think Tiffany definitely needs a change, and hopefully we'll see what goes for Tiffany as we go on. We get into match number 3, which is in the middle of the show, and which is AJ Styles versus John Cena. This is part of John Cena's retirement tour. And this is where the show finally begins to breathe for me personally. Cena versus Styles delivered on emotion, callbacks, near falls, and the crowd heat. I really love this match. Even before we get into the action itself, the fact that John Cena wrote an intro for AJ, which mentions his past in TNA, being the undisputed leader of the Bullet Club, the face that runs the place. It was so beautiful to watch. And honestly, to me, this was my match of the entire show. And you know what? My co-hosts and other friends have said the same thing. And even ESPN gave this thing an A. So this was great. This was my favorite match. Cena and Styles delivered. They traded finishers. They went deep into counter chains. And ultimately, it culminated with Cena hitting the attitude adjustment after a Sister Abigail combo, closing the strong crowd reaction. This is easily, again, my favorite match of the entire card. This is one of those matches where even if you didn't care for it going in, you were locked in by the finish. And that is why this match gets 4.5 out of 5 from me. So John Cena only has 4 dates left on his retirement tour. He is appearing twice for Monday Night Raw. A couple weeks before Survivor Series, he will be at Survivor Series. And then he has his final appearance, which is going to be at the December Saturday night's main event, where he's going to have his retirement match, which is crazy to me. It is wild to see that John Cena is going to be retiring at the end of this year. I have only been a in-depth wrestling fan for like 5-6 years now, but I've done my homework and I've gone back and watched the classic matches and things like that in order to get a feel of where we're at. And in 4 dates, John Cena will be retired. So that is crazy to me. But again, Cena versus Styles, match of the night for me. Hands down, this was a lot of fun. Match number 4 and semi-main eventing the show was our women's tag team match. This is the team of Io Sky and Rhea Ripley taking on the Kabuki Warriors, which is Kairi Sane and Asuka. I think any match potentially following the energy of the Cena Styles match was never going to be an easy task. But Rhea Ripley and Io Sky and Asuka and Kairi Sane, they all held their own in this. I thought the pacing kept fans engaged. Io and Rhea, their teamwork was amazing. The finish that they had landed. The match itself wasn't earth-shattering, but it's definitely solid. I think that given everything that we had on the card, I think, this match being solid in its reliability definitely helped out in terms of context of the card itself. And you know what? Asuka and Kairi put up a good fight, but Io and Rhea would ultimately beat the Kabuki Warriors. And you know what? I gave this match a 3.8 out of 5. This was a good supporting match that filled the space well, and it maintained the momentum toward the main event. Which, let's get into it, shall we? Main eventing Crown Jewel Perth is the men's Crown Jewel Championship. We have Cody Rhodes going into this as the last year's previous Crown Jewel champion, and he is taking on Seth freaking Rollins. So I gave this match a 4.5 out of 5. Seth Rollins defeating Cody Rhodes. And you know what? Here's your main event. Rollins and Rhodes delivered a cinematic fight. This match went on for almost 30 whole minutes. It had signature moves, it had grit, and it had drama. I also really appreciated that Seth wins by being underhanded, by hitting Cody Rhodes with the watch he gave him. And you know what? I love me a good heel champion that will resort to underhand tactics. I think which going into detail, one of the most notable angles in this match, Rollins used the wristwatch Rhodes had gifted him, wrapping around his fist for a pivotal strike. The detail of that, plus the good back and forth and the emotional stakes, pushed this well past just a title match. For me personally, this gets a 4.5 out of 5, and I think it's a fair grade. It was strong, it was memorable, maybe not perfect, but I still had a good time. It should also be noted that it is important to note here that the post-show fallout drastically changed alliances. The Vision turned on Rollins on Raw today in setting up a new trajectory for Big Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker, as well as what is going to happen at Survivor Series War Games. So that's going to be interesting to watch. So now I want to get into, before I give my final conclusion and my overall thoughts, I want to talk about the production, the pacing, and the atmosphere. Because while most people may not think about it, I think about those aspects when I include my final grade for the report card too. So visually, the show looked premium. The crowd was alive, chants, sing-alongs, post-show calls lingered. In fact, fans even serenaded Triple H with, Edge's theme after the show, which was a lot of fun. But the pacing for me of the show, there was a little bit of an issue. The first half felt a bit sluggish. The early matches lacked momentum, and the high points arrived late. The non-linear energy curve is a major factor for me that dragged the show from like an A- to A- range to the B. Also, just to point it out, there was a controversial moment, according to some, that fans booed the U.S. national anthem, singing Australia's instead. The moment made headlines and colored the atmosphere, which, to be completely honest, anybody who watches us know where we stand on certain things, and I'm not necessarily upset about that. But let's get into the final verdict. Why a B? So, putting my ratings side to side, The Street Fight, 3.3. Women's Crown Jewel, 3.9. Cena versus Styles, 4.5. The Women's Tag, 3.8. And the Men's Crown Jewel, 4.5. You get a show that starts slow, crescendo strongly, and leaves you with a big emotional moments. The balance plus weaknesses early is a classic B territory for me. I'll say this, if the opener had matched the energy of the back half, and if the women's title match was longer, I'd personally be bumping it towards a B plus or a low A minus, but as delivered, B is the fair take here, and I think that's okay. Well, that's going to be it here. Thanks for writing this with me. If you want, more information, you want more in-depth thoughts, things like that, this is going to be great. I got you. Just drop it in the comments below and I'm happy to talk. But what I would like to know is in the comments below, outside of the comments of wanting to discuss this further, I want to know what you think. Drop your show score down there. What match resonated with you the most at Crown Jewel Perth? And you know what? Until next time, that's going to be it for me. Make sure to tune into all the other shows that we got this week. We will be resuming our regular live stream, our live editions of everything moving forward after this, starting with AEW tomorrow evening, or today when you're watching this, which would be Tuesday, October 14th. But until then, thank you so much. This is Mikey, El Jefe at BC WrestlePod, signing out. So until next time, remember, take care of yourself, love one another, stay Bi-Conic, and more importantly than anything, you always deserve to finish your story. We'll see you later this week for the rest of our reviews. Check out our schedule on the socials. But until then, this is going to be sayonara, adios, and until next time, peace.